What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. On today's episode, we have a very special surprise to show you. We have an old friend that has come back to the shop, but I just want to give you a little update. We are still cranking on our DeLorean build. Got the LS back there, have a ton of things in the works with the suspension and other things, and we also have Danny's Porsche. And as you can see, we're in the west wing of the shop. So let's head over to the old side of the shop, show you guys exactly what we got back in the shop. We have the Widebody car, the SEMA car. Got this thing back in the shop a couple days ago. There is a laundry list of stuff that still needs to get done. We had a great SEMA. This car made it in the top 10 Battle of Builders for the import class, and it was just crazy being in the Airlift Performance booth. So what are we doing to the car? Well, there's a lot of electrical things that we still have to get done to this thing. We have power window motors that don't work. We have air conditioning doesn't work. And we also have some wiring gremlins in the engine bay that we need to clean up. I'm not happy with some of the stuff that's kind of left over. You know, the wiring underneath is a bit of a mess, and you have like kind of like a rat's nest back there. So we're gonna do some rerouting. The car also smokes like a chimney. I put some huge restrictors on the oil feed lines, but it still smokes. So we gotta do some diagnosing on that to see if maybe the valve seals are bad or the turbos still aren't draining properly. And I swear to God, if they aren't draining properly at this point, I'm gonna move the turbos. But before we do that, we need to do the drive axles before we put the car on the dyno and really put this thing through its paces, because I want to be able to crank the boost up to 11 on this thing. And I know I got the fastest DeLorean in the world. We just gotta get the numbers to prove it. We're also gonna go to the interior. We have a couple things we have to do. Oh, I gotta adjust the doors. I gotta adjust the door handles. This is DeLorean Problems 101. Ever since I put air ride on this car, the doors don't like to open and close, so I think I have to do some adjustments on that. So we'll go over to the passenger side for now. We have all the stuff in there for the rest of Mod Air AC. We've got to finalize the installation on that. We also have our headlights. They're hardwired for SEMA right now on this switch. So I'm going to wire that obviously into the dash, and then just do some odds and ends. We're gonna get these lights to work finally, and we're gonna put the T-panel back in on the roof, adjust some of the gaps on the body. Not happy with this. And this guy over here, this is typical DeLorean stuff. That urethane is over 30 years old and it never fit right from the factory. So I might replace that with an actual fiberglass unit from DeLorean. But first things first, gonna get this thing up on the jack stands, take the wheels off, get the rear axles out, and start working on this airlift suspension. All right, Chris has the car up in the air. As you can see, we're getting this thing ready to go under the knife in a big way. What we're gonna do now is we gotta pull the old axles out. These axles are, well, I'll show you when they come out. Basically, they're sleeved, so they're not gonna be able to handle the power that we're dealing with. I did find someone local that's gonna be able to do some actual axles for us that can handle probably between 700 and 800 horsepower. My goal with this thing is anything over 650. This setup should make about 700 horse, but we'll see. Our other issue before we hit the rollers is the oil. This thing still smokes like a chimney. So one idea me and Chris had was, let's just delete the entire turbo system and see how it runs, just all motor, just all natural. So what we're gonna do after we get our axles out, we're gonna remove the turbos, we're gonna get our Garrett G35s out of the way, and then we're gonna fire this thing up. So if it's smoking, we'll definitely know if it's the engine, and if it's not smoking, then we'll know that there's something wrong with the turbo system as far as the oil delivery and drainage goes. But first thing first, we're gonna pull these axles out. Chris has turbos taken out. Having fun yet?
Yeah.
More DeLorean fun. So we're just organizing everything. Got our Garretts off to the side. We got our turbo smart wastegates that have never seen any boost, which is a huge shame. And we're just taking everything out. We're just, you know, this was all band-aided together so many times, and it's time to just rectify the situation. We do have some oil restrictors that Turbo Smart came out with. I believe it was Turbo Smart. We put these on before SEMA, and they restrict the oil flow down tremendously because LSs have a ton of oil pressure coming out of that feed line. So I thought that was the problem, and it it seemed like it fixed it, and then in Vegas, it started smoking again, and it's been smoking like that ever since. Right now, we're just going through the process of just getting all of this off the car. We're going to plug our feed that comes off of the block up at the top there, where the oil filter is. We're gonna fire the engine up and see if it smokes. If it doesn't smoke, we know that the oiling system is not working properly, which I'm pretty sure that I already know that's the problem. So as far as the axles go, you can see these things have seen better days. These boots were never attached since day one. They've always been snapped. This is the sleeve I was telling you about. This is DeLorean, this is Porsche. So I literally found this piece of moly right off the shelf at a local metal supplier, and I was able to just slide it right in there, weld it up, and it was pretty straight. There's no vibrations, but I've only had the car up to about 50 miles an hour. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get all new units made. They're gonna be nice sealed units on either end with boots that don't leak, that aren't ripped. And this is gonna be a solid piece of hardened steel that's gonna be able to handle the power that we're gonna throw at this car. So we're gonna keep digging and see if we can fire this thing up in a little bit and see if we get any smoke. It's a lot louder, that's for sure. So far, no smoke.
Definitely a lot louder.
Before it was smoking white like crazy. All right, whew, that thing's loud. All right, so we confirmed the engine is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I had a feeling there was nothing wrong with it. This is a very low mileage Gen 4 5.3. So now that we've confirmed that this is what we're dealing with, we're gonna go ahead and redesign the oiling system. And I really think the idea that we're gonna go with is raising these turbos up, because I know a lot of guys in the comments section in the past have complained about how the turbos are gonna hit the ground. I don't think they're gonna hit the ground, but we have these huge pontoons and we got about 6 inches of vibrant titanium. So we're gonna be able to take this pontoon out, raise the turbo up so it's above this oil line, and then we're gonna have a drain coming right over so it's on a nice 15-degree angle. We're gonna hardline it. Boom, 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 do a little jog over. We're gonna have to cut the collector here and make a new neck to go to the inlet on the turbo, and then the exhaust is gonna come down and do like a little whirly bird thing going on, and then we're gonna do our diffuser. But for right now, we know the engine's good, we know everything is good on that front. We're gonna go ahead and cut these collectors off now, start cutting up our fiberglass. We gotta pull our rear bumper off to make some room for the new turbo setup. And then I think we're gonna be ready for the dyno. But before I get too ahead of ourselves, as usual, let's get this door shut and get back down to the AC. We removed the rear panel, the rear fiberglass core support, I guess you can call it, and we got everything all exposed. The biggest reason why we got all this apart is so that we can get in here and see exactly where the turbos are gonna go. So my idea is we're gonna cut the bottom of this fiberglass tub out, and we're gonna tuck the turbo up as high as we can go to this frame rail. As you can see, our drains are right here. So if you can imagine, you know, this plane, we've always been below that drain line, and that's always been the issue. Now, ideally, we would have put little tanks on each turbo, just like you would on a Porsche, but that would put it even closer to the ground. So the tanks would drag on the ground. It's just kind of like overcomplicating it to the point where it just wouldn't be drivable, and the customer really wants to drive this car. So I think the best bet is going to be putting the turbos up higher. All we have to do is cut this inlet right here on the header. This whole design, how it's coming out like this, is going to work just fine. We're just going to do a little U and go right into the hot side, and then coming out the back side will be the exhaust, and it'll come up this way, and I'll be able to modify it and make it work. At that point, the drain line can come right at the bottom of the turbo, and I don't need any pumps, I don't need any electronics, and I don't need anything to be able to just let this drain properly. I think this is going to work out the best as far as longevity for the system and undercomplicating things. While we're in here, we're going to be buttoning up a lot of the wiring. We're going to get rid of this. I never really liked this, the way it comes out the firewall. We're going to simplify a lot of these loose ends. There's a lot of zip tied stuff down here. We're going to fix all that and just clean everything up. buddy Brad from Burnett Control Solutions. Brad is a Corolla nut and he also does a lot of drifty stuff. We went ahead and got this wiring harness out of here. It is a mess. We have a lot of stuff that we're gonna consolidate, get rid of. We have a lot of stuff that we're gonna make it look a little bit nicer. This red wire was actually pretty interesting because we had this one pinned out and then we follow it all the way over and it goes to absolutely nothing. So that was fun. What exactly are you gonna use to clean this up? That's first off.
It's probably just gonna be Tech Flex. If we're trying to fancy it up, we might as well just rebuild a whole new harness. But that would be a considerable amount of time and money.
Yeah, I think for this one, I think just putting some lipstick on her is gonna be sufficient. Since we know that the engine runs and doesn't smoke, we know the wiring harness is working. We just wanna clean it up. So, Brad's gonna take this on with him. Hopefully he can get some footage for you guys. And then when we get it back, we'll throw it back in the car. Everything will be nice and tidied up in the engine bay so that we can get on to the next stage of this build, which is getting our fuel rail situated, getting all the little odds and ends situated. Now that we have the wiring harness out of there, we're gonna delete this hole because I don't like having the hole in the firewall. I never really liked how that worked. We're gonna go ahead and punch a hole in the fiberglass here and it'll go down and then the wiring will kind of route up and go into the backside on top of the transmission and you won't be able to see any of that stuff. So we're gonna continue to clean all this up so that when we put this all back together, it's gonna look exactly the way that I kind of envisioned it in the first place. All right, so we got our firewall all situated and buttoned up. It's nice and clean now, ready for the new harness to come out from the bottom. Got rid of that hole and these two holes for our vacuum block and went ahead and whipped up this whole bracket. So this guy's gonna go right down here on top of the transmission, bolt like that. And then we'll bolt the vacuum block right here. So we'll have everything tucked down low. So we're not gonna have anything in the firewall anymore. So it's gonna be nice and clean and completely smooth. So we're gonna throw some paint on this thing now, get this bolted in, and the firewall's pretty much done. All right, so the last thing we need to do is get our rear strut tower brace back in. We went ahead and cleaned this bad boy up, gave it a little clear coat. And the one thing I did not check on to see if my vacuum block location would clear it. And I was a little nervous to see if it was too high, but looks like we got lucky. it's just on top of the vacuum block, so that's already looking a lot cleaner. While I'm back here, Chris is doing some wiring. DeLoreans like to run wires in a really weird way, and from the factory you had this giant wiring box here with a bunch of old relays and tubes and transistors and stuff like it's a TV station. And they had another one over there, and they had the wiring going up here. Actually, you know what? We have another car. So on our V8 car that we're doing for the channel, we have not gone to the wiring yet. Well, not completely. And you can see here the old ribbon wires that were originally ran. And yes, that is duct tape holding this in. So what we're gonna do is run all new wires down from the doors, down the B-pillars, into these really cool billet switches. And got one of them right here. So those little cool push button billet switches, that's where the old switches were. So we're gonna go ahead and just run all billet switches across. So one will go up and one will go down. So we'll be able to finish this up probably today and see if we get the windows to finally go up and down. Enough about wiring. We're gonna go ahead and bolt this strut tower brace back in on the back here and continue on finishing up this engine bay. All right guys, so we've been working on some really fun electrical stuff, as you can see from the time lapse. So if I open this, we got lights. We don't have lights?
No, I have to
what are you talking about?
manually right now.
Manual it up, dog. So we got the power windows to work. They never worked in this car. And another thing that never worked in this car either is, I think, one of the coolest features of owning a DeLorean, which is the lights that are on the doors.
Go back up.
Go back up.
Yeah, I'll figure it
Want
out.
to clip that thing? Here, just clip that first.
I'll go around.
Okay.
Let me be as fast.
If you ever want to test your patience, just work on a DeLorean. All right, so you're powering up the circuit now. That goes to the lights. Oh my God! Look at that. They're all lit up.
Snazzy.
So we'll have that working. Now we have power windows. So we went in and added 4 more billet switches. Our first one is actually the start switch, the one that's closest to the driver. So you just tap that and it starts it. The R5 actually has a start sequence where it'll fire off the car for like a couple seconds. So you don't have to hold it down, you just push it. And you can program all that in the Haltech, which is really cool. I don't know if I've shown you guys in the past, but we have this relay box up here as well. This is going to control our power windows, it controls our fuel pump relays, it controls our power window switches, as well as those lights that you just put in, and also controls the airlift management system. So the only thing we have left really to wire after the lights is going to be the AC system, but we're waiting for a couple things in the mail for that. But before we get to all that, I want to show you guys the power windows real quick. So we're going to go ahead and throw the power probe on there. Oh boy!
I know what I'm doing.
Look at that! 2 years to get that tiny little letterbox to open and close. Look at that. Boom, boom. And why do we need 2 switches in one, Chris? Why'd you put
4 relays under the center
Why'd you put so
console
many
also.
switches in here?
You need a relay for each function on the switch because you reverse the polarity going into that motor. So one direction you have to have power on one terminal and ground on the other. Then to go down you have to reverse that. And then mechanically the only way to do that without like a Nexus or something badass and cool like that, you have to have 2 relays.
And we're not using the Nexus, guys, because I want to utilize that relay box up front. And I like the idea of having all these buttons here. I'm addicted to symmetry, as you can see. Symmetrical. So I'm not hating all of these switches on the bottom, because a lot of 80s and 90s cars actually had a ton of switches. They literally had a button for everything. So I'm not really like upset with this. So that's our update on the wiring, on the electrical stuff. We're still waiting for Brad to come back with our engine harness. He simplified everything. But before we do all that, we're gonna go ahead and do something that some of you might like and some of you might not like. We're gonna rip the entire air ride system out of the car. The customer, I guess, doesn't want the air ride system. And also, I recently learned that Airlift Performance has canceled their Builder Series shocks. So the entire system that's on the car outside of the flow system is pretty much discontinued. So if we ever had an issue with the air ride, or if a bag blew up or something like that, we can't get replacement parts for it anymore. We're gonna completely take that system off, and we're gonna be throwing off a set of KW variant V2s, and we'll set the ride height, set all of our bump and rebound and everything like that. And this thing should be riding really nice, like a modern Porsche or something. So we're gonna go do that now and get to ripping off the air ride system. Guys, our KW install on our wide body car is all set. We have the rears in there looking good, and we got the fronts in. And I'm really liking the way we have that reinforced lower control arm from the air ride when we made this car for, or we set it up for SEMA last year. If you guys didn't see that episode, we did a whole round of modifications to this car, including the version 2 wide body kit. We squared off the edges and did all kinds of stuff. If you haven't seen that episode, we'll put in the link description below. It's a little bit more guerrilla. The editing's a little iffy and stuff like that. Not what you guys are used to over the past couple weeks, but it still gives you a good backstory as to how the car got to this position here, which is the new wide body kit, the new headlights, and the airlift management system that we just removed from the car. That is bittersweet, but like I said, the customer wanted to go to a more standard system, and we talked about some plans that we have for this car in the future, and we figured that it would be better just to go with KW, since we're using KW on most of our builds for this year. And I want to get this thing on the track. Like, I want to try it out, and air ride is more of like a show thing and looks thing, and not so much performance. So next episode, guys, we're going to be redesigning the entire turbo system. As I said before, we got this thing running with no turbos on it, no oiling system, We got our Garretts, we got everything in there that we need in order to make it work. So we're going to be redesigning the turbo system, getting rid of the electric pump, getting rid of our tank that we had to use to collect the oil. It's just so complicated. I just want to make it normal. So we're gonna raise the turbos up, we're gonna redo the headers, redo the exhaust, and Tyler from Fortune Auto Design is gonna make us a rear diffuser in the near future. I don't know if it's gonna happen the next episode, but we're gonna make a diffuser. I really wanna just close out the back end of the car. Also, we're gonna get this thing on the rollers. So make sure you subscribe and like this episode. It helps a lot with the algorithm. And another thing that I wanted to leave with you guys before we close this episode out, this is a wide-body car, right? I've been calling it the wide-body car, but we also have the V8 car on the channel too that we just sold. So they're both wide-body cars. They're both twin-turbo V8s. And my editor is like, what am I supposed to put in the thumbnails? You get either wide-body 1 or wide-body 2. I've been calling this car the Cyberpunk car, but they're both Cyberpunk. So I want to leave it up to you guys. Within reason, don't call it Mr. Bigglesworth. Let's come up with some names for the two cars so we can differentiate the two, and we can just say, hey, this is car A, a car B, or we can just name it whatever we want. I kind of like the Legacy Edition or Legend Edition or Type R or whatever you want to call it. I want to leave it up to you guys to help us come up with some cool names for both cars so we can kind of differentiate the two of the cars. Next episode, we should get this thing back rolling on the turbos. We're gonna put the wheels back on it, get the ride height set. We have a ton more work to do on this thing. We also have some special boxes. I'm gonna be showing you guys what's in here and setting up something really cool for the air conditioning system. So thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for subscribing, and we'll see you on the next one with this wide body car. See you later.